In order to naturalize here in Japan, you have to give up any other citizenships that you might have. Now, as a permanent resident from a country with a fairly strong passport, why would anyone want to do that? Well, I've decided I do want to do that. And in this video, I'm going to tell you about why I decided to start the process to naturalize here in Japan and how it's going. Let's talk about it. So I've been thinking about naturalizing here in Japan for a very long time. If Japan allowed dual citizenship, I would have done it decades ago. Unfortunately, Japan doesn't allow dual citizenship, so I've been on the fence for a very long time, but now, after 25 years in the country, it's time. And so today I went into the Hōmukyoku to talk to them and start the process of maybe applying to naturalize here in Japan. And actually, this wasn't even the first time for me to go into the Hōmukyoku to talk to them. I actually did this in 2011, about a week before the Tohoku Great Eastern Earthquake. I went into the office, brought along my documents, and talked to my prospective case officer, and that went really badly. I had a really bad experience in that initial interview. Basically, my case officer was really unfriendly, very rude. He was talking down to me quite a bit. He asked me to write a short essay quickly on the spot, and I'm not good at handwriting, so that really threw me off, and the whole experience was really discouraging. And then, of course, a week later, we had the big earthquake and things were disrupted quite a lot. And I kind of put it on hold. I kind of put the naturalizing thing to one side and I've left it there until now. And basically now in 2025, after 25 years in Japan, after the pandemic, which was a real wake-up call for permanent residents here in Japan, that permanent residency was perhaps not as good as we thought it was. So for anyone that doesn't know, during the pandemic, if you left Japan after a certain date, even though you were a permanent resident, even if you had, your home and your family and your job here, you weren't allowed to return to Japan until the pandemic restrictions were lifted. Japanese citizens, of course, were unaffected by this. And that was a huge wake-up call for lots of permanent residents. I remember feeling not just shocked, but like upset and kind of almost betrayed by that. And it just made it very clear that permanent residency is great. It's very stable. You basically have an indefinite leave to stay in Japan, but you still have this kind of conditional status. It can be taken away. You can lose it. And so for me, I started thinking, maybe it's time to naturalize, become an actual citizen here. For me, the biggest difference between being a citizen and being a permanent resident is that a permanent resident has permission to live in Japan and a citizen has the right to live in Japan. Another factor may well have been some of the political discourse around the upper house election this year, where certain parties were talking about foreigners and foreign residents and so on. And that also made me feel that I wanted to maybe become a citizen, get the vote, be able to participate more in the kind of political discourse that's going to shape Japan going forward. Now, I've lived in Japan for almost my entire adult life. I came here when I was 22, straight after university. Japan's the only country I've worked in. It's the only country I've paid taxes in. It's the only country I've owned a home in. My family is here. My parents died a long time ago. My brother died a few years back. And so basically my entire life is here in Japan. I have no intention of leaving. Even if I did leave, I don't think I'd want to live in the UK. I've only lived in the UK for about 8 years anyway. So I was born in Germany, grew up in Spain, went to the UK for secondary school and university, and that was it. And then the rest of my life I've been in Japan, basically. So I decided to start the process to naturalize. I called up the Hōmukyoku. Now this is an important point in that naturalization is handled by the Hōmukyoku, which is kind of an office that deals with kind of registrations. They deal with land registrations and things like that. And so they also handle naturalization. Unlike other visa types, including PR, which is handled by the immigration office. So you're dealing with a completely different entity here. So I called them up, and they said, very busy at the moment, so you're going to have to wait a couple of months So this was a couple of months ago. I called them up a couple of months ago. I made an appointment for today. So this is October 30th, 2 p.m. I had an appointment to go in, and they asked me to bring a bunch of stuff to help with that initial consultation. Specifically, they asked me to bring my Zaidu card and my driving license and my passport. They also asked me to bring any old passports that I had. And unfortunately, I couldn't find my old passport, but my current passport I've been using for about 9 years, and that seems to be okay. They asked me to bring my tax details. In my case, that is a kakute shinkoku. My tax return. If I was working for a company, they'd ask me to bring in my gensen chōshūhyō instead. They also asked me to bring a payslip. And also they wanted the information for my wife. So they wanted my wife's koseki tohon, so her family register, and they also wanted her tax return as well. So in her case, she's a sole proprietor, so I brought her kakute shinkoku as well. And those were all the documents they wanted. Documents in hand, I showed up at the office about 10 minutes early. I went up to the 4th floor, which is where the kosekika is, so the koseki kind of section. Went in, said, gave them my name, said I had a 2 o'clock appointment. They asked me to wait, and just before 2 o'clock, my case officer came and got me. And he was really nice. Oh, thank God. After the last one, I was really nervous about this interview, and because it was an unpleasant experience last time. I didn't really enjoy the thing, which is strange because all the interactions I'd had with the Sendai Hōmukyoku up until that point had been great. Everyone was super friendly, really supportive, encouraging. And so to have my case officer on the day turn out to be like, unfriendly and rude and frankly, I thought unprofessional was a real shock, and it really threw me off. But this time he was great. So a really friendly young guy. And the whole interview, this initial interview, this kind of consultation really, more than anything else, took just under 2 hours. So definitely you need to have a good chunk of time set aside for this. Basically what we did, first of all, he went through all the documents I'd brought with me, and he photocopied them all. So this was so they have a record and start building up my case file. While he was doing that, he asked me to fill in 3 forms. First form was a kind of request to start the process. It was really simple. It's kind of my details, so my name, my address, my phone number, email, that kind of stuff. And then there was a section at the bottom, which was, what is your reason for wanting to naturalize? And he asked me to fill that in Japanese, there and then, on the spot. And thankfully, this time, I was ready. So I spent the morning practicing after having been thrown by the last one. So this morning, I kind of figured out what I wanted to say. I wrote it out and then I practiced it a couple of times so that when that form appeared in front of me, I was like, oh, thank you. And I was able to write out my simple explanation of why I wanted to naturalize in Japanese without making too many huge mistakes. The next form they wanted me to fill out was a kind of checklist, and it was basically a checklist of potential problem areas. And for each section, it was basically, I don't have this, or I do have this, and here are the details. So it was things like, have you committed a crime in Japan? Have you committed any traffic offences in Japan? Have you paid your taxes? Have you paid your pension? Have you paid your health insurance? Have you overstayed your visa? Have you ever been arrested or committed a crime? Fortunately, most of them I was fine, so my taxes and pension and healthcare and so on are completely fine. I did have some traffic offences, but fortunately they were long enough ago that they probably won't affect the process this time round. Contrary to what I've seen on some YouTube videos, it seems like they're just looking at like the last 5 years or so. He mentioned 5 years as a date. All my traffic issues are from before the earthquake, so that's at least 14 years ago. So apparently I should be in the clear for that. And then the last thing I was asked to fill out was a kind of family tree. So they asked me to write my family's names in Japanese, which was weird because I've never done that before. So basically for my family from the UK, who actually all are deceased now, but anyway, so I had to figure out what their katakana would be, because I've never had to write their names in katakana. So that was a bit interesting on the spot. And then I had to fill in my wife as well as her children as well on the form. Fortunately, my case officer was pretty chill about the whole thing and accepted all 3 documents, even though my handwriting's terrible. And so that was the first part of the consultation. I was happy to successfully clear that hurdle without too many problems. So the next part of the consultation was that my case officer gave me this pamphlet and walked me through it slowly. Luckily, I already knew all the information, but it was fine to review it. Basically, it's talking about the conditions that you have to meet in order to become a Japanese citizen. And these are really the basic prerequisites. Meeting these conditions does not mean that you'll be accepted to become a Japanese citizen, but if you don't meet them, then you probably won't be accepted. So just going through the list, number 1 is you have to have lived in Japan for at least 5 years. Number 2 is you have to be 18, and also you need to be deemed an adult in your country of nationality. 3 is your behavior needs to be good, I guess. 4 is you need to be able to support yourself and support your family financially in Japan. 5 is you must have no citizenship or be willing to give up your citizenship once you get Japanese citizenship. 6 is you must pledge to follow the Constitution and the laws of Japan and not be part of any group that's trying to overthrow them. That seems like a fairly easy hurdle. And 7 is you need to have enough Japanese so that you can conduct ordinary life without being too disadvantaged. Luckily, I seemed to meet all of those conditions, so I was okay to proceed. So the next part of the consultation was my case officer went through and asked me a lot of questions based on the documents that I'd provided today. And basically we talked about several areas. So the first area was my background. He wanted to know why I came to Japan, how I came to Japan, that kind of thing. Next was family. So he wanted to know about my family, my wife, her background, our relationship, when we met, where we met, that kind of thing. It's fairly similar to the spouse visa application in that way. Next part was financial. So he was looking at my income and my wife's income. And apparently we were okay in terms of our income, even though it's not particularly large. And he didn't ask about savings or investments. So I didn't volunteer that information, but I think it comes out later on in the process, so that should be okay. Next was work. What kind of work I'd done, what kind of visa I came on, when I got permanent residence, what kind of jobs I'd had from the beginning. So we kind of went through a list of my employment. He asked about any criminal record, which thankfully I don't have, and then traffic offences. So I've had kind of 3 speeding tickets, including a serious speeding ticket when I lost my license. I've had 1 parking ticket in Japan, and I've been involved in a few accidents. But all of those were quite a long time ago, so it seems that it should be okay. Or at least it's not going to disqualify me immediately. This took quite a long time. So this was a good kind of 30-40 minutes of follow-up questions. So he'd ask a question, I'd answer, and then he'd ask a follow-up question and so on. At the end of that, my case officer said that he didn't really see any red flags and that I would be okay to proceed to the next stage of the process. And the next stage of the process is to get together all the documents that you need to apply for naturalizing. As he explained it, there's broadly 3 types of documents. There's documents that you get from your home country, there's documents that you write yourself, and there's documents that you get from Japan. And generally they split these up. So the Japanese documents have expiry dates on them, and they're also very easy to get here, so they don't do those until later on in the process. Ditto with the documents that you make for yourself. So basically the next step for me is to get some documents from the UK. And to help with this process, I got given this long list of potential documents that might be needed, and thankfully I don't really need very many of them, it seems. So we went through this list, and the documents that I need to get are my birth certificate, my brother's birth certificate, my parents' marriage certificate, Ideally, I would also need to get a document that shows my complete kind of family relationship in terms of the members of the family. Unfortunately, I don't think the UK has this document. So normally in that situation, you would get your parents to write a document that said, these are my children, I don't have any other children, and so on. Unfortunately, my parents died quite a long time ago. So I think my case officer was kind of taken a bit aback because he didn't really know what to do with that. So I suggested that I could get maybe my uncle to write it. I have an uncle who's my mum's younger brother, and he took care of me when I was younger. So maybe he could do that part of it. And my case officer was like, yep, that sounds great. So it seems like there is some flexibility, especially when documents don't exist in other countries. And that's it. So this actually seems very manageable. I had this idea that it would be really, really difficult to get all these documents, but I'm pretty sure I can get all of these from the UK. It shouldn't take too long to do that. I also got a list of the documents that I will eventually need, although I haven't been asked to bring them next time. So these are things that I can do later on, but like my wife's Koseki Tohon, again, a copy of my passport, again, copy of my Zaidu card, copy of my license. This is really easy stuff. Some kind of nationality certificate. I'm not sure if this exists in the UK. Again, it might be okay. A formal printout of my driving record. So this would show any traffic offences, etc. But it says only 5 years. So they only want 5 years worth. That's really good for me. I've been a good boy for the last 5 years at least. So that was great. They want a photo. And that's all I've got for now. I believe I also have to write a formal essay explaining why I want to naturalize. I need to submit a CV, kind of resume of all my jobs and work and so on. I've heard I might have to write out all the addresses that I've ever lived at. That would be quite tough. I've moved around a lot. And I've heard that they also want bank account information and financial information. So they'll want printouts of your bank books. They might want details of investment accounts. Apparently a kind of budget, a monthly budget to show how much money you spend every month. But those are all fairly doable, I think. My wife will also have to come to the interview when we do the formal application interview. Just so that they can ask her all the same questions and make sure that our answers match. So we might have to just coordinate a little bit to make sure we're on the same page. Also, I'll have to be really nice to her in the lead up to that. And that's pretty much it. So my case officer did mention that for UK citizens, it's necessary to give up UK citizenship first, and that's part of the application process. But they only ask you to do that if they're pretty sure that you'll be accepted, and they do it much later on in the process, so that you're not stateless for too long. The UK has a rule where you can give up your nationality for the purpose of gaining a different nationality. But if you don't get that other nationality within 6 months, you automatically get your UK citizenship back. So it's kind of fail-safe on that one. Other nationalities, it's going to depend on what the rules are. So basically the Hōmukyoku will be able to tell you how it works in your case. So the next step for me is to get those documents from the UK. Once I've got them, I need to translate them. I can translate them, that's fine. And then I need to call up my case officer and make another appointment. It'll probably be 2 months down the line again. I'll go in, check those documents, and then if they're okay, he'll give me a list of new documents that I need to get. And hopefully that will be enough to make the formal application and then wait to be called for the formal interview. After the formal interview in Sendai, the Sendai Hōmukyoku will investigate. So they'll investigate me, I guess, check all my, my story out, make sure I'm telling the truth, make sure all my documents are accurate. There's no red flags, there's no skeletons in closets. Once they're happy with that, they send my case to Tokyo, and the Minister of Justice would formally approve my application or deny my application. Whole thing will take at least a year or two, I was told, depending on how long it takes me to get documents together and how smooth the process is. But I felt pretty good about it. So the interview itself was really nice. I enjoyed chatting with my case officer. He was really nice. It was a really pleasant conversation. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about the process, and I have a good feeling about it this time. So I'm going to go ahead and get those documents from the UK, and then move forward. I reckon we'll probably have 3 or 4 videos in this series if all goes well. So next video probably in about 6 months time. So if you're not interested in naturalizing, don't worry, we're done with this topic for now and we'll be back to our normal programming from next week. But if you have any questions about the process or about why I'm doing this or anything at all about naturalizing, if you have any comments, if you've naturalized as well, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next video.